Hello and welcome to Geordie Pride. Today's episode is a special one. Now, we often celebrate those born and bred in the Northeast, but I think it's equally important to hear from those who've chosen to make this region their home. And our guest today is a perfect example of this. He's not originally from the Northeast, but he has come to embrace and champion it just as passionately. And that guest is Luke Hilliard, who is originally from Cornwall, but he's now a proud resident of Wylam and a self-proclaimed Cornish Geordie. Luke's involvement in initiatives like the Durham Beer Off and the Wellbeing at Work conference really showcases his dedication to the region. He's not just living here, he's a voice for local businesses and a testament to the spirit of our community. Today we sit down with Luke to hear all about his journey to the Northeast, the experiences he's had along the way, and why he wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It really is a story of embracing a new chapter and making a significant impact in a place that he now calls home. So grab your cuppa and settle in for a chat with Luke. We're going to explore how he's embraced Geordie pride and he's making his mark through his passion for supporting his adopted home. And that is really what I think Geordie pride is all about, celebrating the diversity through the voices of those that love it, whether they were born here or they found their way here. So let's get started. You're listening to Geordie Pride, Voices from the Northeast. I'm Hayley, and alongside my cousin Angela, we're thrilled to bring you the stories that share the heart and soul of the Northeast of England. Each episode, we'll dive into the lives of extraordinary Geordies and those who call the Northeast home, exploring their journeys and celebrating their achievements. From the time to the teas, from the arts to the sports fields, we're here to share the tales of passion, resilience, and of course, Geordie pride. So whether you're from Whitley Bay or Washington, Gateshead or Gisborough, or you're just fascinated by the spirit of the Northeast, join us as we natter with the best the Northeast has to offer. Welcome to Geordie Pride, Luke. It's so lovely to have you here. I think you are going to give us a really unique perspective on the Northeast, being the fact that you weren't born here. So do you want to get us started today and tell us all about your journey, tell us about yourself and how you ended up in the Northeast from Cornwall?
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me, and it's a real honour to be on this, and I think it's a fantastic idea. So, really want to make it work. About myself, I'm 32, and I've been living in the Northeast since 2016, so it'll be 8 years in July. I'm originally from Cornwall, so I'm a Cornish Geordie. And I have to say, ever since I moved, because the reason for why I moved, I met my now wife at Keele University, confusingly, which is Newcastle Underline, which always made things difficult explaining to people. And she's from Ponteland, and I'd never even been further north than York before I met her. So Newcastle, the Northeast, it really was a foreign place to me, and I didn't know the geography very well. I thought Newcastle was right on the border of Scotland, so I had no idea that Northumberland existed, and there's a good hour and a half land before you even get you're even close to Scotland. So that was a bit of a shock. But no, she showed me around it when we first started going out, and I was really impressed with it then. I thought this seemed lovely. I think one thing that stood out was the amount of space. Up here, you really get an idea of that, just the countryside, the city. Again, you don't think of the Northeast, you don't think of beaches. I think places like Tynemouth, Seaham now are really underrated. So as someone who's always been used to the sea, that was a real pleasant surprise. So my wife's a GP, and when she got placed up in the Northeast, it was up in Darlington. So I decided to move to Durham. She said, we can give it a 2-year trial, because I appreciate it was a long way away from me, and if it wasn't for me, we could always look at somewhere else to live. But almost from day one, arriving in Durham, I absolutely fell in love with the Northeast. It's people, it's countryside, it's culture, and very much sort of part of the fabric now, and sort of take great pride in being Cornish, Geordie, and really want to promote the region and its local businesses and more about it, because I think there's so much more that has its potential.
I think that's really nice to hear, actually, because I think, yeah, you're right. Whenever I speak to people that aren't from the northeast, they think the northeast stops at Newcastle. They'll go Newcastle, Sunderland, and then anything above that, they're like, I didn't even know existed. And that's where me and Angela are from. So we're from Northumberland, and it's like this just mystical land that no one really knows about.
It's completely true, and I think because people think of Hadrian's Wall, some people know that runs through Newcastle, and I think people still think that that's like the old border. I certainly did. But yeah, places like Alnwick, Wooler, Morpeth, nobody seems to know about Hexham even, and just how big Northumberland is. It's huge, It's there's so much to explore there.
Yeah, I'm really impressed that you actually said Ponteland right.
That's taken some years of. That's taken a few years of practice. I think my father still gets it wrong as well. My wife's trained that into me.
So you live in Wylam now? Is that
I do, yeah.
What made you settle in Wylam?
I think the village having 4 pubs for one was a big persuasion. No, I remember I had a football match in Brighton and I drove through it and just to get to this match, and I thought, wow, this place is nice, because of the boathouse on a nice summer's evening, bridge. I just loved the look of it, and then look more into it, the history behind it, and the whole area. Tyne Valley itself is a really good place to live, and we were very, very lucky to be able to get a house here, actually. So because it's not too far from Ponteland. You get all the places to go running. So I'm massively into my running. You've got the cycle routes as well. You've got the countryside, but you've also got a train station to get you into Newcastle. And that, for me, as someone who's always grown up in a very rural area, being from West Cornwall, where Bristol was your nearest city, and that was 3.5 hours away. Being within a sort of drive to a city or a train journey, it's just fantastic. So I can't ever see myself leaving Wylam to Dylam. That's fun, but very, very happy here.
Good.
I think that's the lovely part about the northeast as well, is that you said there's so much open space that you can feel you're out in the country in the middle of nowhere, but actually you're only like half an hour away from a city. And yes, Newcastle is not the biggest city by any means. It's quite a small city, but it's got everything you want from a local city. It's got everything you need, and it's such a lovely place. So you've got the best of both worlds, really. You've got lovely open spaces and coastal lines, and then you've got the nice city that's so close by as well, and you wouldn't even think it.
Yeah, well, it still feels big to me. I mean, being from Cornwall, I remember we got a KFC, and that was a big deal. And I don't think you can even get a Primark or anything like that. So just going to IKEA is still a novelty. But yes, no, I think it's a really lovely sized city, because it's not too big. You can get across it easily enough. But it is the fact that it is still a coastal city, really, because it connects up with Tynemouth. But you can get right out to the hills in no time whatsoever. You're about 20 minutes away from the North Pennines, and again, I think that's something that's underlooked. Is just how like incredibly rural and beautiful the Pennines and the hills are. But you're really not far from civilization too. So it is fantastic.
So what would you say are the best aspects of the northeast, do you think? Is it, I mean, we've talked about some of them there. There might be some others that you've not touched upon, but how different is it from where you grew up, and what are the key things that you noticed when you moved up here that was like, oh, this is really different, but I love it?
I think some of the major differences, I think are the people. I think there is a sort of real Geordie friendliness that is special to the region. I think lots of people are aware of that, but the Geordies are that extra bit open. They're interested in you. They ask nice questions. They make you feel really welcome. They don't take themselves too seriously, and I think that's a real noticeable difference. And I've lived in Bristol and other parts of the country, and I think that was one thing about living in the northeast is people are sort of very genuine and more relaxed. Up here, there's a sort of real sort of humbleness about being from the northeast. I Other things, I suppose, just what monkey bloods is on an ice cream. Some of the Geordie slang, some of the food. Peas pudding, cheese scones with soup. There's little things like that. The sort of interest there, I suppose. How big football is up here, which is fantastic. Running. I mean, before I moved to the northeast, I've never interested in running, and now I run very seriously for the Elswick Harriers, and there's such a sort of running and athletics culture up here as well that, again, I don't think quite exists in other parts of the country. And also just things like the sort of the architecture as well, and Newcastle, you can tell, used to be an extremely wealthy town because of a place like Grey Street, built on that sort of Georgian and Victorian money, but also just how it was industrial heartlands as well. It built so many ships, and also like the lead industry. I don't know how they managed to get all that lead all the way out to South Shields and things like that. It's remarkable. So you do get a sense of that sort of industrial pride, and places, and also the things like the high level bridge as well. I think that's really outstanding from what you can see.
I do love our bridges.
Yeah,
I might be biased.
No, I can't think of any city that has as many good bridges as Newcastle. So it's definitely something to be proud of.
Definitely,
especially when you know in the Great North Run.
Yeah, I've just found out I've got into that this year, so that's good. So and through the ballot, so that's good.
That was a good segue, Angela, because I was going to mention that, because you mentioned running. Have you done? You've mentioned you've done quite a decent time in the Great North Run. Do you want to beat that this year?
Yeah, I do. I got 1 hour 13 in 2022, and the aim is to get sort of around 1 hour 12, maybe sort of sub 1 hour 12, and then the year after that aim for sub 1 hour 10, which then qualifies you to actually run with the actual professionals, so you get to be right with the super elites. So you get your own dressing room and things like that as well, I think. So that's like my 3-year plan.
Yeah, the Great North Run's massive up here, isn't it? It's like I would love to say that one day I'd be able to do it, but some days I struggle running up the stairs. Never mind running 12 miles or whatever.
I do running coaching as well, so I'll be more than happy to help you overcome that.
I need to do something. I need to do that, because I think a couple of my friends have done, like, is it the couch to 5K or something. And it's they say, like, it's amazing how much you can just build up your stamina to it quite quickly over time. So you never know. I might join you on that sub 110 challenge one day.
No, I think honestly, just to complete it is a real achievement, and it is an incredible spectacle. It's the only half marathon where you get people cheering every like literally every meter. The crowd is absolutely packed, and you don't really get that with any other race. I mean, I think it is the biggest half marathon in the world. I think it's certainly the biggest in Europe, and obviously it attracts some of the best runners in the whole world. So it is, it's a really good way.
The atmosphere is amazing.
To boost the region,
Yeah. Did you say you did it last year, Luke?
I did, yeah.
The biblical rain was terrible, wasn't it?
I was lucky. I was driving home, so I missed that. But I could see it coming in as I was driving along the A69, and I remember I almost had to pull over because it was just so heavy. And I did think about all these poor runners.
Our tent was like slowly coming in like that with all the rain, and I was busy massaging.
Oh goodness, yeah, no, it was madness of that, and it had been so hot during the run, and we'd had such a cold summer as well, and then of course that Great North Run weekend was the hottest of the year, I think. It was just typical. But no, it's I don't think I'll be like that this year. Well, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I hope. So the Great North Run, I think it looks, I mean, because I've only ever watched it on the screen, I don't usually travel in for it. What would you say is the best part of the run? Because you go over the bridge, like you go like along the coastline, stuff like that. What would you say is the most scenic part of it for you?
It is definitely going over the Tyne Bridge, because it's all downhill. The first sort of three or 4 kilometers, honestly, you get that real adrenaline, that rush, but you're absolutely flying because it's actually on quite a steep hill which you're actually running down, which you're not even aware of when you're driving it. But when you cross that bridge, you do hear that roar of the crowd. That's that real noise. You see so many people calling your name, calling your club, and it's just such a buzz. And then after that, it's actually a little bit boring because you're just on the sort of the main road, sort of going through sort of Bolden and places like that. And then, of course, when you get to the finish and you see the sea, and it is another sort of downhill bit, running through South Shields. That's also the best, one of the best parts as well. But no, going over the Tyne Bridge is incredible. It's a real buzz about it.
I think I'd like the downhill bits as well, to be fair.
Yeah, unfortunately there are some uphill bits as well, which do seem to suck the life out of you a bit. But then it's part of the challenge. It's good fun.
Yeah, the atmosphere is as well, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, it's there's no other race with the atmospheres. Even I did the Great South Run, just for comparison, in Portsmouth in October, and it's not even close to how incomparable the two are. Like the Great North Run is just. It's just such an event. The whole city sort of shuts down for it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Great South Run still a brilliant route, and I really did like Portsmouth as a place, but you can't even compare it to the Great North. It's so much more special.
Brilliant. So we're going to switch it a little bit and talk a little bit about events and such, because you are big into organising events. You've got a few initiatives going on. You've got the Geordie Beer Off.
That's right, yeah. So I actually had the Geordie Beer Off. I hosted that back in September at Newcastle Castle. It was only a small event because it was the first one, and I wanted to sort of test how well it worked. And it did go to plan, and people had a really good time. They got to drink beer in obviously a historic building in the castle. They felt castles themselves, got to go up to the rooftop. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't brilliant, and there was a train strike. But despite that, it was still a really, really good night. So I'm organising the Durham Beer Off, which is going to be a bigger event at Lumley Castle in Chester Street. So that's going to be on the 24th of February. And then, yes, after that, it's the Wellbeing at Work conference, which is going to happen at the Copthorne Hotel on the quayside on the 27th of March. And that's just going to be an afternoon event from 1 p.m. to about 5:30. And the purpose behind that is looking at ways we can make the workplace a better place and a happier place to be, because so many people seem unhappy at work. A lot of people are leaving their jobs. Retention rates, productivity rates seem to be all over the place, and there does seem to be this sort of, certainly since COVID, I think, a different attitude to the work, but people don't seem to like it, and that's a real shame, because you spend so much time at work. Unfortunately, it's just the reality. That you want to be able to enjoy it. You want to be at a place where you feel like you're getting the most out of yourself or feeling productive. And what this conference does, it brings in wellbeing experts, people who specialise in stress and anxiety, specialise in team building exercises, who leadership, management, and it gives businesses and anyone who's interested the opportunity just to network, meet from them, attend workshops, listen to talks and speeches, all about how to make the workplace better. And we had an event back in October at your prior restaurant, and this one's going to be even bigger at the Copthorne Hotel coming up in March.
It sounds brilliant. It sounds so much in need. It's like, because I know both me and Angela have had experiences in the past, and I ended up leaving my corporate job purely for mental health reasons, because I was just so incredibly unhappy there. And I desperately tried myself to try and fix things, because ever since I joined corporate in like 2005, and I've massively been into my well-being. It's something that just underlying throughout my whole life. I've always been into not so much physical health, I would say. It's more kind of the mental health side of it, and making sure that I'm the best I can be, and the people around me are the best they can be. And so I would do a lot of mental health and wellbeing at work initiatives in my job. And it was a huge passion of mine, but I just felt as though if you don't, you can push as much as you like as an individual person, but you've got to have the organisation's backing, don't you? You've got to have their push and to try and get things moving and to change the how would I say it, that just the whole atmosphere in the office. They need to make sure that people are on board with it and that people can make those changes. And if you put together proposals that you want to do X, Y, and Z, that they're going to be able to go, actually, yeah, do you know what? Go ahead. So the fact that you're able to run this and try to get companies on board of just understanding that well-being is something so important, I think is great, because the more the companies jump on it and get the management on board, it's going to make it so much easier for the employees to be able to start initiatives internally themselves, but also for them to just be able to feel as though they're being looked after. And when you feel looked after, you're so much more productive and you're so much more happy to be in your job, and that's going to be much more sustainable for yourself and the business, isn't it? So I think it's an amazing initiative.
Absolutely, and like yourself, you know, I've been pretty miserable in the workplace myself, and that's one of that was a huge motivation to go self-employed as well, because I do find that being my own boss, I'm in control a lot more. But yeah, I think companies, there is more, certainly a lot more acknowledgement now that companies do need to invest more in well-being and social programs, and you do get more well-being experts at big firms and things like that who are qualified to check. But at the same time, some businesses they just think that, you know, having a fun wear a silly hat day or a pizza party or just a night out can solve a lot of problems, or in reality you know, it's just a sticking plaster, and some people don't like sort of big company social events as well. And it's also making businesses aware that they've got to truly understand what their staff want, and a lot of the time it means little if you're going to have a fun incentive day or a day out when actually your staff are underpaid or overstressed and they're not getting enough holiday. And sometimes that's what can fix it, is actually investing in higher salaries or more holiday time, and you'll get better workers. So it's really a case of being able to actually improve things in the working world without overcomplicating it.
Definitely, even in the Eastern world, the the Chinese and the Thai, they all like do Tai Chi beforehand, before work, and they have regular breaks, and they can work between like family life, and they've got a bit of a work balance there. And if they've proven that they can do that, why can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you do get cases in Japan where they do have a very long hours culture, and often in places like it, rush hour will be at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, because they still have that sort of idea of it. The longer you're at work, the harder you're working. But you're quite right; they do have a lot more company initiatives and awareness of sort of rest and relaxation and that sort of wellness for staff. And yeah, and I think in a way it is a generational thing. I think as more younger generation takes more of a higher position in the workforce, things will make a change. But it's the whole point of this conference is to look at ways of how that can happen and really sort of be a force for good in creating that. Because I think people are capable, and already there are shifts happening. But we need to fix it, because if people are going to be miserable at work, it's not going to be good long term for the economy, productivity, and all sorts.
So what sort of regular events do you do, Luke, that sort of incorporates in the corporate world?
Well, I'm very much want to promote small businesses, and my events, and I'm still sort of new in making them happen, but that is very much my purpose in what I want to create, and that's for me. So, for example, the Durham Beer Off is only you can only enter if you're an independent brewery, and you've got to be based in County Durham, because there's a lot of small breweries around there that here get a real opportunity to shine and get a sort of showcase for them. And it's tough, especially for brewers. They've got so many markets to compete with, big chain pubs, and for me, I just get frustrated when you just go into a pub and it's obviously owned by another chain, and it's all got the same beer, the same lighting at the front, and it loses that character. And that's a real shame when there's so many good ideas that exist in small businesses to sort of come through. But I really want to change that and give small breweries that opportunity to show what they're about, and it gives a real identity to the region through what they drink and eat. So there will be more events sort of based around local food, looking to do like a English wine or sort of Northeast wine night at some point, where it's sort of local wine. I know Northeast doesn't quite have the vineyards, but there are some in Yorkshire. Whiskey, gin, there's quite a few distilleries in the region. So it'd be really good promoting them, and also just the things like tea and coffee and chocolate. So the events are sort of going to be sort of hospitality themed, but also running as well. I'm looking to do events that promote running businesses in the region too, and also that links into other smaller businesses, physiotherapists, yoga, Wellbeing, and for me that's really important.
Yeah, well, that's basically what I do for a living as well. So within my role, within the charity, that's what I do. I do corporate massage as well. So we're trying to get into that sort of niche as well. So to raise not only just a little bit of awareness for our charity, but a little bit of money as well, and going to do corporate massages and reflexology, engine head, crystal therapy, the whole shebang really. And we've got a Wellbeing van as well. So going out rural, because there's a lot of people who we work with that's got cancer that don't like to go back into the clinical setting as well. So they like to be out and about in a normal sort of environment. So that's another string to my bow sort of thing with the charity as well. But yeah, corporate side of it, that's proven a lot with retention as well. Like even an on-site massage, neck and shoulder massage, stepping away from the desk for a good 15 minutes has proven well sort of on the working day.
Oh, 100%. And just it being having something to do in your lunch hour, even lunch half an hour, and just doing some exercise or something that's away from work but still sort of productive. The benefits can be enormous. So I think that's a really, really good thing that you do. I hope to see you at the conference.
Well, actually, Luke, it's really strange this, but today I met a lady who knows you, right? And I've just clicked on, and she's just given me your email to actually contact you to do this conference at the Copthorne. And it wasn't until you said it I thought, that's Luke.
Good. Well, clearly the word's getting about, so that's the main thing.
The power of universe, I'm telling you. It's how weird. Yes, I'll have to email you, Luke.
Good. Okay. Well, no, we'll definitely sort that out. That sounds absolutely fine.
So, Luke, what do you think? Where do you think this passion for local businesses has come from? Is it something that you have done when you were out in Cornwall? Like, is it just been since you've come to the Northeast?
I mean, Cornwall's obviously quite individual in itself, and it's quite independent, and it takes great pride in having Cornish themed things. If you go there is an awful lot of Cornish tea, and obviously pasties are very big to the region. Greggs can't conquer Cornwall because nobody will eat there because they don't do real pasties, and that's literally what it boils down to. And it's it's very proud of it, sort of fishing industry, and so I suppose maybe a sort of subconscious level, I've always grown up thinking that small businesses with that sort of individual pride is really important. And I suppose when you get to Northeast, there is definitely sort of businesses that take great pride in the region, but I just love having that uniqueness about it, and that sort of sense of sort of regional character, and something that's a little bit different, and for me, sort of showcasing that and giving people the opportunity to try it is really important, but it's also good for helping people get wealthier without all the money just going to the top of a big corporation, and it takes away that sort of corporate power that a lot of the bigger companies have. And I think that's something that has unfortunately changed over the last 40-50 years. There's been a huge decline in smaller businesses, and you go to the many towns in the UK now, and it is just the same old shops, and it's a real shame, because it would be great if everywhere could still run its sort of own smaller independent businesses, and keep that sort of thriving. So that to me is really important.
I totally agree, because I moved down to Leeds about 9 years ago, and one of the biggest things I noticed was the prevalence of local businesses. And yes, there's obviously the big chains, but there was so much more support for local community-based shops and home-based businesses and things like that. Whereas up in the northeast, I didn't necessarily see that. I mean, it might have probably evolved since I left, but I think what you're doing, showcasing the northeast, and why another reason why we're so passionate about doing this podcast as well, is just putting a spotlight on the northeast and saying, look, there is some amazing stuff here, and we're going to broadcast it, and we're going to tell you about it, because we do get overlooked in the northeast. So I think what you're doing is fabulous. And you mentioned like what you've seen change over time. As someone who's embraced the northeast into their heart, what would you say? Are there ideas or initiatives that you think could make the northeast even better over time from what you've seen elsewhere?
Well, that's a really good question. I think partly you want to still give people the access to live there, and I have noticed that Newcastle has become increasingly more expensive for friends and people who are trying to move to the city. House prices and rents have just shot up now, to the point where you can no longer say, oh, Newcastle's a cheap city. It's still cheaper than Bristol and other places down south, but nowhere near what it was 4 or 5 years ago. So I think investing in houses, and I know for a lot of people that can be frustrating if new housing builds are blocked on there, but I think it is important that that keeps happening. And then likewise, you want to keep investing in the industry, and I suppose investing in the environment is going to be a real key one sort of for the northeast, whether it's investing in renewable energies, looking at different sort of avenues of sort of technology that people can explore. And I know that there was that battery plant up in Blythe, which still seems to be up in the air whether that's actually going to happen or not. But you want businesses like that to be able to take off, to give that employment and opportunities for people, but also where they can live that isn't going to cost them an arm and a leg with mortgages or rent. So for me, that's going to be essential to keep the northeast thriving. I'm pretty sure that's a bit of a boring answer, sorry.
No, I think it's completely right, because we lost a lot of industry with the with the mining and everything like that. Like that's just gone, and unfortunately that left a lot of local villages and towns in dire straits, really, particularly around the area where me and Angela are from. So looking forward, and what is going to be big in the future, it's technology and renewables and all that, and it's like, can we focus on those areas and see what we can bring into the northeast that would help and support that, because we have lost so much industry. If you look back at early 1900s compared to what we've got now, like it's just incomparable, really.
Oh, you see pictures of Newcastle, like the quayside, about 100 years ago. It's almost unrecognisable, the amount of industry and ships that used to float down the Tyne. And I know places just outside of Wylam. You know, I've seen old photographs of like the power plant at Stella, and the fact that Wylam had 2 railways is fascinating, because it had all that industry, and places like Bladen were used for all the sort of smelting from all that lead mines and then sent out to sea at South Shields. And so, some of that may have changed for the better, because it probably was horrible at times. It would have really smelt. It would have been really dirty. There was a lot of poverty, obviously, in South Shields and places like that. And you've got sort of books that there's those novels. I think it's Catherine Cookson that sort of highlights how difficult it was to live there. So maybe some of it has changed for the best. But no, there are plenty of small villages in the northeast that I know I've had it incredibly tough, and they've really struggled from a lack of investment and lack of employment since a lot of mines and factories did close down, and that for me is really sad. But again, that's one thing Cornwall and the northeast has in common, because you only have to go to Cornwall and it's just got all these old mine shafts from many years ago where it used to be a thriving industry.
Sad, really, isn't it?
Well, there are still some good companies up here, and places like Sage and Essentia, and obviously places like even like the Metro Centre. I know it's probably not what it used to be 10, 15 years ago, but it's, you know, it's a good example of how you can turn some old sort of industry into new ideas. So I think as long as that will to make it happen and that generation continues and that investment, then absolutely it will thrive. But it's going to take hard work and to make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. It'll take time. It will. So, look, what message would you like to give anyone? If anyone's listening, they might be new to the Northeast or they're considering making it their home, what would you say to them?
If they're considering making it at home, absolutely go for it, because I really can't see how you could regret it. It's not as cold as you think it is. You know, that's one thing I worried about when I moved up here. It's a lot more connected. There's still plenty going on. And it's worth it for all the reasons we've discussed, you know, whether it's cool city, countryside, beaches, the people. It really is a fantastic place. And in terms of me living here, well, I've ever since day one, since I moved to Durham and then later Wylam, I've always felt really well looked after, really sort of welcomed into the community, and I've really felt like I'm part of it now, and that's sort of shown in the clubs that I'm involved in, and the history of the area that I've really come to love, and I just look forward to living here for longer.
Oh, brilliant. And you call yourself a Cornish Geordie, so what would you say that means to you? What would you say that embodies in your life?
Yeah, obviously I am Cornish. I was born in Truro. I lived there until I was 18, so my whole childhood and sort of upbringing is Cornish, and that is something I'll never have in the Northeast. There's that sort of schooling and that sort of childhood memories. It's all, for me, it's all set in Cornwall, and of course all my family still live in Cornwall, so I'm still back there regularly. But for me, you know, I can't ever see myself going back to Cornwall. My son, he may only be 2, but he's going to be a Geordie, and obviously my wife is. So going forward in the future, I'm sure I'll see myself more as more of a Geordie than a Cornish person. Give it 20 years or so, and the thought of that is really exciting, and I really like that. So yeah, that's where it's going in the future. But that's based at the moment on a mix of 2.
It's lovely to hear, and we're welcoming you with open arms.
Thank you.
So before we wrap up, we thought we'd have a little bit of fun with a little quick fire round. So it's just asking you a couple of questions and just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. The first one might be quite controversial. So
interesting.
Right, now, tricky question this, Luke. Cornish pasty or Greg's sausage roll?
Oh, Cornish pasty. I'm sorry, but you can't compete with the Cornish pasties have a real artisan about them. So it's that one 100% is Cornwall. I think there could be a market, you know, for a Cornish bakery in Newcastle. I think that is something the Northeast is missing. But you would be competing with Greg's and all, so it would be a tough market. But
quite a challenge.
It's definitely definitely some baking that the Northeast would benefit from.
Next one. So because we know you are a big beer fan based on your events, what is your favourite local beer? It's a good plug for them, this.
Yeah, no, honestly, there's quite a few have come to mind. Ooh, I really like
Newcastle Brown Ale.
Honestly, it's probably a Tyneside Blonde, which is by Hadrian Border Brewery. That's always my go-to beer if I'm sort of in the pub and they've got it on. It's just a really good, easy, drinkable sort of blonde ale. It just goes down really, really nicely. So yeah, Tyneside Blonde.
That's what I like. I don't like anything too heavy. I might try that one.
So Newcastle Brown Ale. Next one, Luke. What's your favourite Geordie phrase or word?
Scran. I just looked like, just I'd never even heard of that when it came up, and it was just, I didn't know what it was when people said the scram, the bait. That's just like, what, I didn't know, just no idea. And then it turned out bait means lunch or just food, and it's never even heard of that being called in the past.
Yeah, my husband says bait, like if he's asking like the girls when he's making the pack lunch, and because my girls, like, they were born in the northeast, but they've grown up in Yorkshire, so I'm just like, what's bait? What's he talking about? Very confusing. So next one is day out in the northeast, coast or countryside?
Ooh, I mean, it's a little weather dependent on that, isn't it? Because I'd say coast. Honestly, I think Tynemouth and like Sugar Sands, just sort of north of that, or like Ambleside, absolutely gorgeous. Bamber, I mean, Bamber is just breathtaking.
Castle on the beach.
Yeah, and honestly, that castle is just enormous. So although there are some gorgeous hills, especially out in the Pennines, I prefer mainly sort of to cycle there, whereas the beach is a bit more relaxing. So yeah, it would be the coast.
Lovely.
Yeah, definitely. Bamber's beautiful. Last question, Luke, and finally describe the northeast in just one word.
Friendly. It's the first thing that comes to mind. Honestly, people here are just so friendly, and it's not just people, it's businesses, it's sports clubs, it's everything. They've always made me feel welcome, always made me feel happier, and I feel like I've become a sort of more friendlier person since living up here.
Oh,
that's really lovely here. Yeah, that's nice. So now, before we say goodbye, I just want to check if there's anything that you want to share with us. You've mentioned a few of your events and upcoming projects that you've got, but is there anything link-wise that you want to share so our listeners can check out your upcoming events?
Yeah, obviously the Wellbeing at Work conference, as I said, 27th of March at the Copthorne Hotel. The link is on Eventbrite, so if you just Google it, should come up through Eventbrite, but if you go onto that website, it'll be there. If we can get sort of post that on Instagram, and then keep in touch for future hospitality events. There'll be one or two this year, but I think predominantly most will be in 2025, because they take a lot longer to plan than I realised to make them really successful. So yeah, they're very much in the planning stage at the moment, but come next year, there should be a lot that really promote just the region's food, restaurants, businesses, and to me that's really important.
Brilliant. Yeah, and we'll include all the links in the show notes, so you can check those out. So if you want the Eventbrite link, we'll pop that in. Cool. And for anyone that wants to follow you, and have you got any social media handles you'd like them to get in touch with?
Yeah, if people follow the Durham Beer Off, that is like my main event sort of Instagram page, and through that there'll be future events posted, and that will sort of, whatever the big event is, the sort of that Instagram will regenerate into that. My company name is called Look for Two, but at the moment it's still sort of in the early stages. But so at the moment, just stick with Instagram, because you get all the information through that.
Perfect. Lovely. So thank you so much for spending some of your evening with us. I know it's very precious time, and sharing your story and all of your events with us, and we really appreciated it, and I hope you have enjoyed our little chat.
I've absolutely loved it. It's been really, really good talking with you both, and I think this is a wonderful idea, and wish you all the best of luck with it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support Geordie Pride further, then don't forget to subscribe, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram @Geordie Pride. Until next time, keep that Geordie Pride shining bright.